All right, bombshell evidence or a big nothing burger? Stay to the end to find out. This is going to be a breakdown of the day 15 of the Copa versus Craig Wright Satoshi identity trial with BTC Core on the aggressive with Craig Wright on the stand. Let's recap here. Stay to the end. I'll break it all down and kind of evaluate, give my non-lawyer's perspective of where we are in the case. So we just finished up. I'm shooting this video literally just completely unplanned and scripted. It's 8:30 in the morning California time, and we're done. Up at 2 o'clock. And when we first started, it was actually a relatively surprise because at 2 we went into a guy who came forward and tried to interject in the case on do what's called it would be potentially added as a claimant. So the court confirmed that Copa is the claimant. So Copa is the claimant, and then this gentleman wanted to be added as an additional claimant to the case. He believed that he had a sounded like a cryptocurrency project that was going to be affected by the outcome of this case, and so therefore he believed he had standing to come in and some. He didn't have any new information or evidence, but his business would be affected. So the court gave him a very considerate opportunity, actually gave him about 15 minutes to talk about it and consider it. And the court actually gave a nice, thorough due process ruling on the record and struck him and said he wasn't going to add any value. And procedurally speaking, it wasn't correct. So we started at 10:30 a.m. UK time, 2:30 San Francisco time after that. And then Dr. Wright came into court, 3-piece suit, button up, very, I think it was a double-breasted coat this time, black. Looks like he likes wearing pinstripes. And he came in really confident, but he started getting grilled by Hough. Hough is the Copa barrister who's been, the focus most of this case on the offense here, going after Wright. And, he went right into He basically went into some really technical arguments about that had differences on tribal issues of fact that Wright had put forward pursuant to some of the experts. And one of the things that Madden report was arguing or basically saying is that the way that the files were presented to Madden believed they were inauthentic. He couldn't authenticate them, and they were claiming they were forgeries. Wright rebutted this, and here he did a good job on this point where he alleged that, hey, I provided specific instructions to my solicitors for how to download these files and use these files, not download. And Wright alleged that they should have been accessed on a live website. So like a cloud live site. And think of like Salesforce.com, we got live, it's cloud. Or some live site where you're using the file there, not downloading it. And so what Madden did in the report, according to Wright, is Madden downloaded the files, and therefore once he downloaded them, it corrupted his ability to do a proper analysis as an expert. And he just literally, this was a solid hour of back and forth about Hough, berating Wright, admit this is a lie, this is another forgery, this is another wild tale. Admit it about you doing these files. And literally, Wright kept giving the same answer consistently. It's like, I'm very clear, it's very instructions. I said, use the live site, meaning the actual URL to access these files. Do not download the files. Mr. Madden failed to follow instructions. He downloaded the files anyways, and he did his report without following instructions. So of course he got bad results. He chose to get those bad results by not following instructions. This is basically the first half, all the full morning to alliterate that one point. So that was I think it was a point for Wright. It really comes down to whether or not Wright's expert rebuttal evidence can rebut that. So that's going to be next week. We really are only speculating on what Wright's expert rebuttal evidence will look like. But if Wright was the expert, he did a good job at rebutting that point. Whether the court consider that Wright's statements there, that's to be determined. Normally, it would just be they're going to consider the rebuttal evidence from the expert, not from the witness himself, the other party. So next up was the BTC Core barrister. This is a gentleman by the name of Mr. Orr, very articulate. Oh, first of all, let me go back to Mr. Hough. Hats off to Hough. He actually did a good job at articulating his point, and Wright got very heated in this part of the morning session. very emotional because the point, Hough was berating him on the same point over and over. I mean, even I was getting frustrated. So Wright, rightfully so, was frustrated. I stood up and I'm like, why is Hough just not, how come the court's not stopping Hough from repeating the same thing for literally almost an hour? I'm almost not exaggerating. I'm thinking like 45 minutes, the same question, same point about these files. And Wright had the same answer every single time. He should have accessed it the way he didn't follow instructions. He should have accessed it in the live version, and he didn't. So my point is that Hough did a good job. He did a really good job. Hats off to Hough. But I think that portion would potentially go to Wright. But he's comes down to the rebuttal evidence. Next up was Orr. Orr is the barrister for BTC Core, and he had the rest of the afternoon session, morning here in California, and he basically hammered Wright on some of these, mostly about the LaTeX files and the way the Bitcoin white paper was written. And so what Wright claimed is, and he admitted, he said, those do look like they have been tampered with. However, as this court already knows, I've been sabotaged and attacked by Mr. Ager-Hansen, who's also threatened a witness in this case and been fired from his duty at Enchain. And so there is testimony on that. And so this is where things are going to get complicated. So Wright's basically admitting that the LaTeX files that were submitted over to BTC Core were, once BTC Core, attorney, Mr. Barrister, Mr. Orr looked at it, he sees with a microscope and a very, very up close look at it, he could see that there were changes in these files. So Wright's now saying, well, clearly Mr. Ager-Hansen or Ali Zahar, who Wright is now alleging is working with BTC Core, okay, basically on this case. He's basically alleging that you guys sent one of your people over here to infiltrate this and get this evidence, and now send it back to you and tamper as it's tampered. And it was such a fine point on the LaTeX file that, like the naked eye, I think when Wright probably saw the papers and he submitted the evidence, he couldn't tell. It was like one of these, like a Trojan horse. Wright's claiming that somebody forged it, changed these files and then sent it to Wright, and then Wright submitted it to the other side as evidence. Okay, now the other side's reviewing it and saying, look, here's this one word right here. This is clearly a forgery. It's been doctored. Wright's basically admitting that it was in that case. And so we've got a problematic situation here. We got some tribal issues of fact to come about, that are really getting more and more complicated than meets the eye. So it's not fair to just call this case one way or the other right now. I will say that this is going to go to Copa because that did not look good on Wright admitting that some of the files were in fact doctored, and it really comes down to, is the court going to hear anything about Ager-Hansen in this case? Is he going to consider taking judicial notice on these injunctions that were issued against Ager-Hansen? How does the testimony of Stephen Matthews line up? It's apparent that the Mike Hearn testimony from the other day, from earlier this week, that was specifically intended to discredit Matthews. That's what that was for. Now, in looking at it in hindsight, because he had a difference of the facts on the meetings from a dinner that he and Matthews had together, where you got two guys saying two completely different things. So that's BTC Core and Copa's witness to state that Matthews is not credible. Because if Matthews is credible, well, then Ager-Hansen could potentially come in. They could take judicial notice of that other case and the injunctions. And if he's not credible, and this Mike Hearn witness comes in and he's credible, well, then it's going to be problematic. But that's a real tribal issue of fact, and seeing how the court, addresses that will be yet to be determined. But ultimately, it's definitely going to go to Copa today. We're going to do a 7-7 round, okay, even going into Monday, and I'll get to you guys here, get everyone in a minute regarding the this white, they call it the Watermark. We did a video yesterday, going through Craig Wright's paper in 2008 about signing with steganography. Our friend Xiaowei Liu at Scrypt published an article on it. I put it in my video yesterday and the link there so people could read about how it works. But apparently, when the BTC Core, Mr. Orr and then Hough had rested, once Craig Wright's solicitor, Lord Gravenue, got up, he had no further questions. So it's really, in a way, it's disappointing. Why didn't Gravenue get the opportunity right there. It was the end of the day. It was already basically time was up. Their court's closing. But it seemed like that would have been the chance for him to say, all right, Dr. Wright, pull out your computer and let's open up the original version of this white paper and let's see if there's an actual watermark in it or not. It seems like that should be coming up right now, and it didn't. So that was big of a disappointment at Nothing Burger in a way, because Wright's talking about it in his prior testimony. He's back on the stand today. That's likely going to be his last time. I don't see any reservation for him being recalled again, unless the court's going to take special instruction. But I will make this comment and observation that this court, Justice Miller, is very lenient and equitable. And he's and the example is this: a random guy showed up in the court today, and this is how the court started. Supposedly he filed some papers in before. The court struck him, said they weren't relevant. This guy shows up in the case today, and he got the court 20 or 30 minutes of the court's attention at the beginning of the case, just a random guy, to try to get joined into this case late. I thought that was very equitable and considerate of the court. That being said, if there's some sort of special instruction that's Wright's going to come up at the very end, I wouldn't put it past Justice Miller at making an exception and letting it happen. So don't rule Craig Wright out. This case is not over. I'd say we're going into a 7-7 tie for next week. But Copa's gaining ground fast right now, and these expert witnesses are going to be tough next week. They're going to be really tough. So they're gaining ground, and Wright's got to really have a plan together if he wants to win this case, whether it's proving access to the private keys to the original early Genesis blocks, the original blocks of Bitcoin, or whether it's a LaTeX file, that he can access and show that there's a watermark in the database that says, CSW signed this paper in 2008. I mean, he's got to come up with something like that to really drive this point home, as people probably already know. And without that, it's going to be really a toss-up right now, especially coming into this expert evidence for next week. So we're back on the stand next week with the experts. We've got Madden, Rosenthal. It looks like Zemgal is going to come in and testify for Wright. Looks like there are going to be some other experts that are still unknown, and there's a list of other hearsay witnesses that are still unknown on actually what's going on. So we're not seeing the actual documents and the docket live like the people in court are. So I just want to thank and I want for being in court on a regular basis and reporting out, tweeting it. I want to thank Kurt Walker Jr. for recapping and all the live unofficial transcripts he's doing, typing away like a crazy person. And then also I want to thank David, Attorney David Pierce, for coming on last week and giving us his perspective of being in the courtroom from what that actual observation, especially being that he's completely one-sided on the Copa side. And so it's good to hear his perspective as well, being a colleague and associate of Justice Miller, so it's really refreshing to hear that. I got a lot of compliments from people about that as well. So I'm always open to hearing both sides of the story here and giving you the information the best way I see it and evaluating. And I'd say we're going to a tie for next week at 7-7. So stay tuned. I got interview from Michael Middleton that's going to premiere tomorrow when he was in Acapulco. An update on the Titan of Blockchain interview. That's going to be premiering in April. That's Calvin Ayre. People asked about that. When's that coming out? April. Calvin Ayre, Titan of Blockchain, April. Stand by for that. But I do have coming out Sunday a really cool interview. It's going to be shot today at 11, and that's going to be Mr. Jack Pitts. And I'm going to really break it down with this guy. He's a freaking guy I really respect. He was in the Navy. Then he became a stock picker, and he did incredible work as a stock picker and as a hedge fund. He has some great stories with early Amazon, eBay days, picking these stocks, during the .com, seeing it all unfold, and now having a company involved in Bitcoin, and going into his golden years of his life, and he's making a commitment saying, I will not miss the next wave of the big boom of the next, big invention like he was involved in before with the .com. So he's made a commitment to that, and he's got a business on Bitcoin, which is an online dictionary called Slicktionary. Very cool, super cool invention. And we're going to be talking all about the case here. So stand by for that over the weekend. Be sure to like the video, hit the subscribe button. Thank you for all the new subscribers. Get this video out there. Share it on Twitter. Share it on all the social media platforms. Get the word out there. We got to get the message to the top. And thank you everyone again. I'll see you at the top. This is Gavin Mail.